I was on my knees in a flooded basement when my phone rang. My hands were covered in rust and grime, and I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. "Dad?" The voice was cold, unfamiliar. It had been 8 months since I'd heard it. "Daniel," I said quietly. "My son. My only son. I need to talk to you. Can you meet me for dinner? Thursday at Giovanni's?" Giovanni's. The Italian place where we used to celebrate birthdays when he was a kid. When things were different. When his mother was still alive. "I'll be there," I said. He hung up without saying goodbye. I sat there in that dark basement, water dripping from the pipes above me, and tried to remember when exactly everything had gone wrong. My name is Thomas Bennett. I'm 65 years old, and I fix pipes for a living. It's honest work. Hard work. The kind of work that leaves your knuckles scarred and your back aching at the end of the day. But I've never been ashamed of it. My wife, Margaret, died 2 years ago. Cancer. The aggressive kind that takes everything from you before you even realize what's happening. We'd been married for 40 years. She was my high school sweetheart, my best friend, my entire world. Daniel was 38 then. He'd done well for himself. Corporate lawyer. Big firm in Manhattan. Married to a woman named Vanessa who wore designer suits and looked at me like I was something she'd stepped in. 3 months after Margaret died, Daniel called me into his office. Not his home, his office. "Dad, we need to talk about your living situation," he said, not even looking up from his computer. "My living situation?" I'd asked. I was still living in the house, the same house where Daniel had grown up, where Margaret and I had painted the nursery yellow because we didn't know if we were having a boy or a girl, where we'd taught Daniel to ride a bike in the driveway. "The house," Daniel said. "It's in Mom's name. Technically, according to the will, it goes to me." I felt like I'd been punched. "Your mother and I discussed this. We agreed that if something happened to her, I would stay in the house until—" "Until what, Dad? You can't afford the property taxes. The maintenance. It's a 4-bedroom house in a good neighborhood. Vanessa and I have been looking for something bigger. We're planning to start a family." "You're kicking me out?" I couldn't believe it. This was my son. My boy. "I'm not kicking you out. I'm giving you 2 months to find a place. That's generous, considering the legal situation." He handed me a folder. Inside were documents. Legal documents. My name wasn't on the deed. Margaret had inherited the house from her parents, and we'd never bothered to update the paperwork. Why would we? We were married. We were forever. But forever had ended, and apparently, so had my son's compassion. "There's an apartment complex near the highway," Daniel said. 1 bedrooms start at $900 a month. With your Social Security and the plumbing work, you should be able to manage. I looked at him, really looked at him, this man in his expensive suit, with his fancy office and his cold eyes. Where was the boy who used to fall asleep in my lap while we watched baseball? The teenager who cried on my shoulder when his first girlfriend broke up with him? "What would your mother say?" I asked quietly. For just a second, something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe, or regret, but then it was gone. "Mom's not here, Dad, and frankly she left things in a mess. I'm just trying to clean it up." I moved out 6 weeks later. Not to the apartment complex near the highway. I couldn't afford that, not really. My Social Security barely covered food and gas. The plumbing jobs were getting harder to find. At 63, I wasn't exactly the first choice when people called for repairs. I ended up in a room above a convenience store in Queens. $200 a week, cash. The bathroom was down the hall, shared with 3 other tenants. The walls were so thin I could hear every argument, every cry, every whispered conversation in the middle of the night. I didn't tell Daniel where I was living. He didn't ask. The work kept me going. Every morning I'd wake up at 5, drive my old pickup truck to whatever job I'd managed to book, and spend the day crawling through basements and attics, fixing leaks and unclogging drains. I was good at my work, always had been. People trusted me. When you've been doing something for 40 years, you learn not just the technical skills, but the human ones. How to talk to a worried homeowner. How to explain a problem without making them feel stupid. How to charge fairly and deliver quality. One Tuesday morning in April, I got a call from a property management company. They had an emergency at one of their commercial buildings in Midtown. A pipe had burst on the 15th floor, and water was pouring into the offices below. "How fast can you get there?" the dispatcher asked. 40 minutes, I said, already grabbing my tools. I made it in 35. The building was chaos when I arrived. Water was streaming down the walls in the main lobby. Security guards were trying to divert people away from the elevators. A woman in a business suit was shouting into her phone about liability and insurance. I took the stairs to the 15th floor, carrying my heavy toolbox. My knees complained with every step. By the time I reached the right floor, I was breathing hard. The burst pipe was in a law firm's office suite. The reception area was flooded. Carpet squished under my boots as I walked through. A young receptionist sat at her desk, looking miserable as she tried to move files to higher shelves. "Plumber's here," I said. She pointed toward a back hallway. "It's coming from the bathroom, I think." I found the source quickly. An old pipe behind the toilet had finally given up after years of stress. Water was spraying everywhere. I shut off the main valve first, then got to work. It took me 3 hours to fix it properly. Not just patch it, but replace the entire section of pipe that had corroded. While I worked, people kept walking past, stepping carefully around the water, returning to their offices now that the immediate crisis was over. I was packing up my tools when a man appeared in the doorway. He was maybe in his 50s, well-dressed, with silver hair and sharp eyes. He looked like money. Old money. "Are you the plumber?" he asked. "Yes, sir. All fixed. Shouldn't have any more problems with that section, but I'd recommend having someone inspect the pipes in the other bathrooms. This building's old enough that you might have similar issues elsewhere." He nodded, but he wasn't looking at my work. He was looking at my face. Do you have a moment?" he asked. I glanced at my watch. I had another job in Brooklyn at 3, but something about the way he was looking at me made me pause. "Sure," I said. He led me to a corner office. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan. Expensive furniture, framed degrees on the wall. This was a managing partner's office. "Please, sit," he said, gesturing to a leather chair. I sat, feeling out of place. My work clothes were still damp from the burst pipe. "What's your name?" he asked. "Thomas Bennett." He went very still. "Bennett. Thomas Bennett from Queens?" "Born and raised," I said slowly. "Do I know you?" He sat down heavily in his own chair, staring at me. His hands were shaking. "My name is Robert Castellano," he said, "and 30 years ago you saved my son's life." I didn't remember at first. 30 years is a long time, but he kept talking and slowly the memory came back. It had been the summer of 1994. July, hot as hell. Daniel was 8 years old. We'd gone to the community pool in Astoria. Margaret had packed sandwiches and lemonade. It was one of those perfect summer days that you wish you could bottle and keep forever. I was lying on a towel, half asleep, when I heard the screaming. A woman at the edge of the pool, pointing at the water. A small shape at the bottom of the deep end. I didn't think. I just moved. Dove in, still wearing my t-shirt and shorts, swam down, grabbed the boy. He couldn't have been more than 6 or 7, small for his age, unconscious. I pulled him up, got him to the edge. Someone else took over then, someone who knew CPR better than I did, but I'd gotten him out. That was the important part. The boy had coughed up water, started breathing again. The ambulance came. His parents were hysterical, thanking me over and over. I'd given them my name, my phone number, told them to call if they needed anything. They never called. I figured the kid was fine, and they'd moved on. That's how life works sometimes. "That was your son?" I asked Robert now, in his expensive office. "That was my son," he confirmed. His eyes were wet. "Michael. He's 36 now. A doctor. Pediatric surgeon. He saves kids' lives every day, Mr. Bennett. Because you saved his." I didn't know what to say. "We tried to find you," Robert continued. "After that day, we wanted to thank you properly, to repay you somehow. But you'd given us a phone number that was disconnected. We drove to the address you'd written down, but you'd moved. This was before social media, before you could just Google someone. We looked for years, Mr. Bennett. Years." He stood up, went to a filing cabinet, pulled out a folder, an old folder, worn at the edges. "I kept this," he said, opening it. "The police report from that day. The witness statements. Your name. I've thought about you every single day for 3 decades. Wondered where you were. How your life turned out. Whether you knew what you'd done for us." He set an old photograph on the desk. A little boy in a hospital bed, smiling despite the oxygen tubes. Alive. That's Michael the next day, Robert said. Because of you. I picked up the photograph with shaking hands. The boy looked happy, grateful to be alive. I don't need thanks, I said quietly. Anyone would have done the same. But you're the one who did it, Robert said. Mr. Bennett, I'm a wealthy man. I built a successful law firm. I've made investments. I have money, lots of it. And for 30 years, I've wanted to do something for you. To repay you for giving me my son back. I felt uncomfortable. Really, Mr. Castellano, that's not necessary. Let me finish, he interrupted gently. When I saw you today, at first I wasn't sure. But then I looked at your work invoice. Thomas Bennett, Queens. I had to know if it was you. So I asked one of my associates to run a quick background check. I hope you don't mind. I tensed. A background check? What had he found? I know about your wife, he said softly. I'm so sorry. And I know about other things. Your living situation. My face burned with shame. He knew I was living in a room above a convenience store. Knew I was barely scraping by. Mr. Bennett, I want to help you. Please, let me help you. I don't need charity, I said stiffly, starting to stand. It's not charity. It's a debt. A debt I've owed for 30 years. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a checkbook. My heart sank. I didn't want a check. I didn't want money that would run out in a few months, leaving me right back where I started. But Robert wasn't writing a check. He was pulling out other documents, legal documents. I own several properties, he said. Investment properties. One of them is a brownstone in Park Slope, Brooklyn. 3 bedrooms, recently renovated. It's been a rental, but the current tenants are moving out next month. He slid a document across the desk. A deed. I'm putting it in your name, he said. No mortgage. No property taxes for the first 5 years. I'll cover those. After that, they'll be minimal. It's yours, Mr. Bennett. Free and clear. I stared at the paper. A house. A real house. I can't accept this, I whispered. You can. You will. Because if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have a son. I wouldn't have watched him grow up, graduate medical school, get married. I wouldn't have 2 grandchildren who call me Papa. Everything I have, everything I am, exists because you dove into that pool 30 years ago. Tears were running down my face. I couldn't stop them. There's more, Robert said gently. He pulled out another document. I've set up a trust fund, $200,000. It's invested conservatively. It should generate about $8,000 a year in income. Not a fortune, but enough to supplement your Social Security. Enough to live comfortably. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. And, he continued, if you'd like to retire from plumbing, I understand. But if you'd like to continue working, I'd like to offer you a position. My firm owns several buildings. We're always in need of a reliable maintenance person. Steady hours, good benefits, real health insurance. The pay is $50,000 a year. $50,000. I'd been making maybe $30,000 in a good year. Why? I finally managed to ask. Why all this? Robert came around the desk. He put his hand on my shoulder. Because you gave me everything, he said simply, and because the world has clearly not been kind to you. I can't fix everything, Mr. Bennett, but I can fix this. I sat in that office and cried, really cried for the first time since Margaret died. Robert just stood there, hand on my shoulder, letting me fall apart. When I finally pulled myself together, I looked up at him. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you. Thank you, he replied. For saving my son. I left the building in a daze. Drove back to my room above the convenience store in shock. The documents sat in my toolbox like a bomb. A deed, a trust fund, a job offer. My life had just changed. Completely, impossibly. I thought about calling Daniel, telling him what had happened. But something stopped me. Pride, maybe, or hurt. He'd thrown me away like garbage. Why should he be the first to know about my good fortune? But I did see him that Thursday, at Giovanni's like he'd requested. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in a booth in the back. Vanessa was with him. They both looked tense. Dad, Daniel said as I slid into the booth. Thanks for coming. Of course, I said. The waiter came. I ordered water. I wasn't hungry. So, Daniel said, glancing at Vanessa, we wanted to talk to you about something. Here it comes, I thought. They want something. Vanessa's pregnant, Daniel said. We're having a baby. Congratulations, I said. And despite everything, I meant it. A grandchild. The thing is, Vanessa said, her voice tight, we need to think about the future. About childcare. My mother's in Florida, and she's not able to help. And daycare in the city is incredibly expensive. I waited. We were thinking, Daniel said, that maybe you could move in with us. Help with the baby. We're still in the house, your old house. We'd convert the garage into a small apartment. Nothing fancy, but it would be yours. Free rent, obviously, and we'd pay you $300 a week to help with childcare. $300 a week, $1,200 a month, to live in a converted garage and be their live-in nanny. 8 months ago, I would have jumped at it. 8 months ago, I was desperate enough to take anything. But that was 8 months ago. Where would I sleep? I asked calmly. In the garage apartment, Vanessa said. Like Daniel mentioned. We'd put in a bathroom, a small kitchenette. A garage, I interrupted. You want me to live in a garage? It would be renovated, Daniel said quickly. It's not like you'd be roughing it, Dad. And when the baby cries at night? When you need help at 2 in the morning? Would I be on call? They exchanged glances. Well, yes, Vanessa said. That's sort of the point. I sat back in the booth, looked at my son, really looked at him. No, I said. No? Daniel repeated, as if he'd misheard. No, I'm not interested. Dad, this is a good deal. You'd have a place to live, income, family nearby. Family? The word came out bitter. You kicked me out of my home, Daniel, the home where I raised you, where your mother died. You gave me 6 weeks to pack up 40 years of my life and disappear. Dad, that was different. You didn't call, not once in 8 months. You didn't check on me, didn't ask where I was living, didn't care if I was okay. And now you want me to come be your servant because you need cheap labor? Vanessa's face flushed red. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Let me tell you what's not fair. I'm 65 years old. I spent 40 years working my hands to the bone to provide for my family. I was a good husband, a good father. I was there for every school play, every baseball game, every parent-teacher conference. And when I needed you most, when I'd just lost your mother and didn't know how to function, you threw me away. Dad, if this is about the house, it's not about the house. My voice rose, and other diners turned to look. I lowered it. It's about what the house represented. It's about you looking at me and seeing a burden instead of a father. It's about you choosing money and convenience over compassion. Daniel's jaw tightened. Fine. If you feel that way, then I guess we have nothing more to discuss. I guess not, I agreed. I stood to leave. Daniel grabbed my arm. Wait, he said. Something in his voice had changed. Become calculating. Where are you living now, anyway? Are you managing okay? And there it was. The real reason for this dinner. He'd heard something, or guessed something, and he wanted to know. I could have lied, should have lied, but I was tired of being ashamed. I'm doing fine, I said. Better than fine, actually. Really? Vanessa's tone was skeptical, because last we heard, you were living in some dump in Queens. Things change, I said simply. What things? Daniel pressed. It's not your concern. Dad, come on. If you've got something going on, some kind of income, you should tell us. It could affect, well, it could affect a lot of things. He meant in irritants, even though I had nothing to inherit. But he didn't know that things had changed. I recently came into some money, I said finally. Someone I helped a long time ago tracked me down, wanted to repay an old debt. I watched their faces change. Interest, greed, calculation. How much money? Daniel asked. Does it matter? Dad, we're family. Of course it matters. If you've got assets, we should know about it. For planning purposes. Planning purposes, I repeated. You mean, so you can figure out what you'll get when I die? That's not what I meant. Yes, it is. And here's what you need to know. I have a house in Brooklyn. Paid off. I have a trust fund that generates income. And I have a job that pays well and includes health insurance. I'm going to be fine, Daniel. More than fine. Vanessa's eyes widened. A house in Brooklyn? What neighborhood? Park Slope. She actually gasped. Park Slope, where houses sold for millions. Dad, Daniel said carefully. That's wonderful. Really, but you should think about the future. About your legacy. Vanessa and I, we're starting a family. Your grandchild. Don't you want to make sure they're taken care of? Your child will be taken care of, I said. By you. Because you're a successful lawyer with a good income. You don't need my help. But family helps family, Daniel insisted. You always taught me that. I did teach you that, I agreed. And then you showed me how well you learned it when you kicked me out of my home. Dad, please, let's not fight. Can't we start over? Can't we be a family again? I looked at him, saw the desperation in his eyes. Not desperation for me, for a relationship with me. Desperation for my money. No, I said. We can't. You're being ridiculous. I'm being realistic. You showed me who you are, Daniel. When I was at my lowest, you threw me away. Now that I have something you want, suddenly you care. But it's not me you want. It's what I have. I pulled out my wallet, threw $20 on the table for my water. Goodbye, Daniel. Vanessa. Congratulations on the baby. I walked out of Giovanni's and didn't look back. Daniel called the next day. I didn't answer. He called again and again, left voicemails, sent texts. Dad, please, let's talk. Dad, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Dad, don't do this. I'm your son. I deleted them all. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. From a lawyer. Not Daniel's firm, someone else. They were contesting the house, claiming that since Margaret had died, Daniel had a right to any assets I'd acquired afterward. Something about inheritance law and marital property. It was nonsense, of course. Robert's lawyers told me as much. The house was a gift to me, personally. Daniel had no claim. But he was going to try anyway. Robert called me after he heard about the lawsuit. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't mean to cause problems with your family. You didn't cause anything, I told him. This was always there. You just brought it to light. Still, if you want to give him something, to make peace. No, I said firmly. He made his choice. He has to live with it. The lawsuit went nowhere. Was dismissed within 3 months. Daniel's lawyers told him he was wasting his time and money. But he didn't stop. He showed up at the brownstone in Brooklyn. I was working in the garden when he pulled up. Dad, please, he said, getting out of his car. Please, can we just talk? What is there to talk about? I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. I made a terrible mistake. I was grieving Mom, and I wasn't thinking clearly. And I'm sorry. He looked sincere. Sounded sincere. But I'd heard him sound sincere before, in his office, when he was kicking me out. Are you sorry that you hurt me? I asked. Or are you sorry that I don't need you anymore? He hesitated, just for a second, but I saw it. I'm sorry that I hurt you, he said. But if I were still living in that room in Queens, would you be here? Another hesitation. I'd like to think so, he said. But you don't know. No, he admitted. I don't know. At least he was honest. Daniel, I loved you from the moment you were born. I would have died for you. And when your mother died, I needed you. Not your money or your house. Just you, just my son. And you weren't there. I know. And now that I'm doing well, now that I have something you think you deserve, suddenly you care. But it's too late. I forgive you. Because holding on to anger will just hurt me more than it hurts you. But I don't trust you. And I don't want a relationship built on greed. Dad, go home, Daniel. Take care of your wife and your baby. Build a good life, but build it without me. He stood there for a long moment, then got back in his car and drove away. I haven't seen him since. 6 months have passed. I'm living in the brownstone. It's beautiful. 3 bedrooms, which is more than I need, but I've turned one into a workshop and one into a guest room. For who, I don't know, but it's nice to have the space. I took the job with Robert's firm. I work Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. I maintain the buildings, fix what needs fixing, and supervise the outside contractors. It's steady work, dignified work. My coworkers treat me with respect. The trust fund generates income like Robert promised. Between that, my salary, and Social Security, I'm more comfortable than I've ever been in my life. Robert and I have become friends. He introduced me to his son Michael, the doctor. Michael and his wife invited me to dinner. We talked about that day at the pool, about how strange life is, about second chances and gratitude. They have 2 kids, 7 and 5. Beautiful children who call me Mr. Bennett and show me their drawings. Last week, Robert asked if I'd be interested in doing something with the trust fund. What do you mean? I asked. Well, it generates more income than you need, and I was thinking maybe we could use some of it to help other people. Set up a foundation, maybe. Something that helps elderly people who are struggling, who've been abandoned by their families. I thought about it. About all the people out there living in rooms above convenience stores, too proud to ask for help, too worn down to hope for anything better. Yes, I said. Let's do that. We called it the Margaret Bennett Foundation, after my wife, the woman who taught me what love really means, what family really means. The foundation helps people with rent assistance, medical bills, home repairs, small amounts usually, a few hundred here, 1,000 there. But to people who have nothing, it's everything. I volunteer there 3 days a week now. Meet with applicants, hear their stories, approve grants. Last month, I helped a 72-year-old woman whose children had drained her bank account and left her with nothing. We paid off her debts and helped her get legal aid. She cried when I told her she was approved, held my hands and said, "God bless you." I thought about Daniel, about how he'd cried when his mother died, how I'd held him and told him it would be okay. I wonder if he thinks about me, if he regrets his choices, if he tells his child about me, or if I'm just an embarrassing story he'd rather forget. Sometimes I miss him, miss the boy he used to be, before money and ambition and his wife's influence changed him. But mostly, I'm at peace. I save people now, not from drowning in pools, but from drowning in debt and despair and loneliness. And every time I approve a grant, every time I see someone's face light up with hope, I think about Robert's son, about that little boy I pulled from the water 30 years ago. You never know when a single act of kindness will come back to you, when a moment of courage will change the trajectory of your entire life. I dove into a pool because a child was drowning. I didn't think about reward or recognition. I just did what needed to be done. And 30 years later, that child's father dove in and saved me. That's how it's supposed to work. That's what family means. Not blood, necessarily, but people who show up when it matters, who remember, who care. Daniel's baby was born 3 weeks ago. A boy. I heard it from a mutual acquaintance. I sent a card. Nothing more. Just congratulations and best wishes. I don't hate my son. I genuinely hope he's a good father. I hope he learns what I learned, that love isn't about what you get, it's about what you give. And sometimes the people you save are the ones who save you in return. I'm 65 years old. I live in a beautiful house in Brooklyn. I have meaningful work and good friends. I have enough money to live comfortably and enough purpose to get up every morning excited about the day ahead. And I have a story to tell, about how I hit rock bottom and found out that rock bottom isn't the end. Sometimes it's just the foundation for something better. I'm Thomas Bennett. I fix things. Pipes, houses, lives. And I've learned that the things worth fixing are almost never the things you expect.